How's everybody doing today? Welcome back to Reading with Matthew James, and I'm back again for another review video on The Crash by Freida McFadden. We're on chapter 16 through 21. All right, and 16 through 19 was still Tegan, still interesting. We're stuck at Hank and Polly's house in the basement, still injured, pregnant, haven't got to the hospital yet. Now, what happens after chapter 19 is we get changed over to part 2, and part 2 is 2 days before the crash, and we move from Tegan to Polly as our main character. So I kind of like when writers do this and authors, keep the book interesting, keep the readers, reeled in, wanting something different, and a change happens. So, makes us want to read on even more, because Freida switches chapter 20 as Polly, and we start hearing the story about Polly and how her and Hank came into this situation of what's going on in their life and how they met Tegan. So yeah, chapter 16 comes back with Tegan about to take the pills that she needs more than Tylenol. She needed something heavier. She's in excruciating pain, broken ankles, something's wrong with her foot. She still hasn't taken the boot off yet. She won't even dare to do that. Polly brings the pills down, but Tegan can't do it. She rethinks about the fact that she's not just living for herself anymore. She is also living for her baby. And everything she eats or takes, well, that goes to the baby as well. And she thinks about it and decides not to. Polly is like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Yeah," and puts the pills on the nightstand, says, "I'm not going to do it. I got to think about my daughter here. Everything I take could affect her." So Polly, shakes her head and she's happy. She's happy that Tegan's going to not take the pills, because as a nurse, she knows that this could be something not good. There's only certain things you could take while you're pregnant, and, a high dosage of painkillers is not one of them. So Tegan's, says something funny about how she's going to tell her daughter when she gets older about not only this crash and everything crazy that she went through, but about how she suffered a night and days through all this pain without taking any pain pills just for her. So now Tegan's in a position where she's, can't sleep. She's frustrated. She talks about how she slept on and off for maybe hour here, hour there. She keeps having this bad dream about Simon. Every time she does fall asleep, she's having a dream, a relapse of what happened that night, of him being over her, raping her. And just causing her to not sleep well. Polly comes down in the morning, and Tegan makes an adjustment on the bed and notices that the lumbar of the hospital bed is working, so the power's on. So she tells Polly, "Hey, Lara, time to call 911. And Polly's like, "Yep, the power's on, but the phone lines are still out." Oh, come on. Tegan's like, "Really? Well, have Hank get me in the truck and let's take me to the hospital." She says the plows never came. Streets are still covered in snow. Too high. Can't drive the car. Oh, Tegan's like, "Come on. I really need to get out of here." And, this tends to happen a little bit, I notice, as our character Tegan. But, she has a lot of assumption in her thoughts. Every time something happens, meeting Hank, assuming he's this big bad guy, and then in the back, bad, didn't even want to get out of the car in the beginning of her, in the book, because the neighborhood's scary. I'm starting to notice our character Tegan is she assumes a lot, so she starts to assume that Polly is not telling the truth, and Hank is a bad guy, and they don't want her to leave. And she's like, is the snow even... Is the streets really not plowed? Is that even the truth? And are the phones really not working? She doesn't know, because she even asked Polly, "Hey, let me use your cell phone." Polly's like, "We don't get service out here. We're all the way up in the hills in Maine. We never get cell service." So, Tegan has this, she's just assuming that now that they're trying to keep her there. And the chapters go on, 16 through 19, and it's kind of relaxed. setting. Polly brings Tegan some playing cards and she's playing solitaire. Polly makes her lunch, brings her down this barbecue chicken sandwich and plays gin rummy with her, which, turns into a thing when Tegan wins the game, and then Polly's like, that's not how you play the game, and like they have a little like funny little back and forth. And then after, again, here's another assuming thing, but Tegan ends up eating the lunch and falling asleep from noon to 8 o'clock. She wakes up, it's nighttime now on the day, and she can't believe she slept that long without waking up from the baby or waking up from the pain that's been keeping her up. So now she starts to assume, did Polly drug me? Did Hank drug me in the food that they gave me? Because I haven't slept like 8 hours like this since I've been pregnant in my 3rd trimester, she says. So, a little bit more assuming from Tegan, which we're starting to get a lot of. And I guess it keeps her interesting as the character because some of her assumptions get to you as the reader, like, wait, is Polly telling the truth? Is it just Hank that we think is the bad guy? So it definitely does keep us reeled in to have Tegan with all these assumptions, about what's going on. Towards the end of chapter 19 is when it kind of hits home, too, because it's the next day and still the phones are out. Polly tells Tegan, hey, the trucks never came. They didn't plow us out last night. Like, we're still stuck. We can't get out. And at this point, Tegan, at the end of 19, I want to open it up and just read it because, it's kind of a cold statement here. She really thinks a sudden terrible certainty goes through my head. I'm going to die here. As I was reading at the end of 19, Tegan's really convinced that Polly and Hank are lying to her and keeping her here at this point now, this injured, pregnant, can't get to a hospital, snowed in, all this stuff. And, so much has happened to her, and with everything, she says, I'm going to die here. She doesn't think that they're ever going to let her go. So that's where it ends for our character Tegan. Like, chapter 19 stops us, so we're left hanging on with Tegan here, and that's a good thing that Frida does because she keeps us reeled in, wanting more. We move on to part 2, the day before the crash. So in part 2 starts the day before the crash, and we immediately turn over to chapter 20, which is titled Polly. So now we're getting into Polly as our character. We're going to start learning about Polly, her history, her past, to bring her into how, again, her and Hank got to be with Tegan. Now in the beginning of 20, Polly's in the kitchen cooking dinner for Hank. A young girl by the name of Sadie comes to the house. Sadie ends up being the neighbor down the street, and they live in this rural area, so the neighbor down the street's like a half mile away. The neighbor down the street ain't close. So this young girl, Sadie, comes over to the house after school and, wants to help Polly out cook for Hank. So she lets her in, and Polly describes this girl as dirty shoes, not clean, not very taken care of. And it's because we find out, Polly tells us that Sadie's mother's not around and that her father Mitch is the only one raising her, and Mitch is kind of an angry, aggressive guy, drunk, and he doesn't do a good job at taking care of Sadie essentially. And Polly has like a little spot in her heart for this girl. She feels like she wants to help her as a nurse, as a mother figure, as a just a caring person. So she's with Sadie in the house, notices Sadie's dirty, and offers, hey, do you want to take a bath, Sadie? Yeah, I want to try a bath. Like she doesn't shower or take baths. So, Polly runs this bath for Sadie and gets her some bubbles and gets her in the bathtub, getting her clean. pouring water with a cup over the back of her hair to get the shampoo out, and tells her, Sadie asks, hey, can you braid my hair like you do yours? We find out from the character Polly that she wears this single French braid down her hair every day. And Polly's like, yeah, I'll do a French braid for you. It's a fancy braid. You'll love it. Now, at the same time, Hank knocks on the door. He's home from work. We find out that Hank works right up the hill at a auto body shop that they actually own on their property. Hank's a mechanic. He fixes cars. He fixes cars for people who are driving around through the freeway or the town and break down. So Hank has come down from work and he's coming home for the night and catches Polly giving young Sadie a bath here. And we kind of learn a little something about Hank because he doesn't really get upset. He doesn't get angry. He's just talking to Polly like, hey, you shouldn't be overstepping your boundaries here. And Polly's like, I know, but this girl's not being taken care of. Mitch doesn't do anything for her. I feel like I want to help this girl. So Hank just says, hey, you're getting yourself into trouble here. And Polly's like, I know, because Polly described her interactions with Mitch before as not good, and that they've had some back and forth. And even in this situation with the bath with Sadie, as she's giving her a bath, she sees that Sadie has a mark on her arm, like a bruise that someone grabbed her. And she asked Sadie, what's that bruise from? And I fell. Polly's like, I've been a nurse. I know the difference between a fall and somebody grabbing your arm. So she doesn't believe her. She understands that her dad's might be an abusive guy. And she even says that she had called CPS, Child Protective Services, on Mitch before and they had come out, but there was really nothing that they could do because Sadie didn't tell on her father. And at the time they came out, nothing was wrong. But Mitch always assumed it was Polly who called on him, so he doesn't really have a friendly nature with Polly, and even tells Sadie, I don't want you stopping over at Polly's house. And when she does, Polly knows she's not supposed to be really doing anything for Sadie or with her, but she doesn't care. She does it anyway. She just has this, motherly nature and the nursing thing, and she doesn't care. So that actually comes to a head in the end of chapter 21. But before that, we kind of get a little bit more insight on Polly and what's going on in her life, because as 20s and going into 21 to 22, or I'm sorry, to the end of 21, she mentions it multiple times, but Polly calls what happened to her the incident. The incident. She says it multiple times in chapters 20 through the end of 21, and it's like, what is this incident? This incident is, as she describes it throughout the couple chapters here, is something that's caused her to not be working as a nurse anymore. That's what caused her to not be at the hospital anymore. We thought from what Tegan assumed was that Hank had her stop being a nurse and not being in a hospital, but it was this incident. We also find out that 2 years ago, it was Polly's mother who got an aggressive breast cancer diagnosis, and she was who moved into that downstairs basement that was turned into a hospital room, the same one that Tegan's in right now with her injuries from the crash. So it was Polly's mother who was down there, and Polly, because of this incident, wasn't working, wasn't a nurse anymore, and got to be down in the basement helping her mother out all the way up until she says, I held my mother's hand until she died. So we know that the mother passed away in the house from breast cancer. She also talks about how she likes to keep that basement door closed because she feels like the spirit of her mother, the ghost of her mother, is still in the house. Like she could feel it. She says, I put my fingertips on the door and it's almost as if her fingertips are touching me on the other side. So, Polly has this history with the house and her mother passing away in this incident that caused her to not be a nurse anymore. And we're starting to learn things about Polly we didn't know. And it all comes down into chapter 21 is about what Polly's been doing with Sadie. She gets on the phone. A phone call comes in from Angela, which is one of Polly's old friends that she worked with. They were both nurses at the hospital together, and it's one of the only friends she has that she still talks to since she hasn't been a nurse anymore. Angela's telling her, hey, one of the other nurses is finally retiring, just wanted to let you know. And Polly's like, great, as if I would go to a retirement party, but I won't, because she doesn't go around the hospital people anymore. That's what she says. And then Angela tells her she's pregnant. Only Polly does not take to that news well. She starts getting emotional. She starts getting to a point where she's going to cry. And, she's definitely not feeling what Angela has to say. And Angela's like, I'm sorry. And she's like, no, I'm happy for you. Congratulations. Oh, what is it? A girl? Oh, great. Good for you. But Polly's rushing her off the phone and not really wanting to talk about this. So gives us some questions about what's going on with Polly, because right after she gets off the phone with Angela, so there's a knock at the door. She tells Angela, hey, I got somebody at the door. I gotta go. Okay. As she hangs up with Angela, Polly goes into her phone and blocks Angela. She's like, I don't want to get any more calls from her. Your only friend that you were a nurse with for a time, she's the only one calling you, plain out says it, and you don't want to talk to her anymore? So now we're starting to get some interesting backstory from Polly here. It's the incident. 2 years ago, mother passes away, and now you have this friend who's pregnant, and you seem happy, but you're not happy for her. So, as a reader, I'm starting to look at the scenario. Was the incident, did it have something to do with Polly being pregnant, maybe losing the baby? We don't know. But the way she's acting towards her friend Angela being pregnant, which is supposed to be great news, and she's not happy for her at all, and crying and stuff, something definitely happened with this, with that. And I'm hoping that we learn exactly what happened as we learn about Polly. The knock at the door, she goes over, looks to the people, it's Mitch. It's the father of Sadie. Now, she doesn't want to, but Polly opens the door, and immediately Mitch is pissed off. What are you doing? I told you to stay away from my daughter. You gave her a bath. Oh, relax. Polly doesn't relax. She just wanted to have a bath. I told her I had bubble bath. She tries to play off the story. And Mitch isn't having it. He pushes his way in the house and starts walking towards Polly. Polly describes Mitch as about a 5'10" guy like her. She's 5'10", but about 50 pounds heavier than him. So she says he's a bigger guy, and he's backing her down. He's telling her, I told you to stay away from my daughter. When she comes over, you're not supposed to be around her. Now Polly said that she smelled whiskey on him, and he smells like he's drunk. So we're in a position where the guy who doesn't want her around his daughter is drunk. He's pressing his way into the home, and we know Hank's at work up the hill, so Polly's by herself. She starts getting back down into the living room, and Mitch is pressing her, yelling at her, saying, you're gonna learn this time. And now Polly's looking around for weapons. She's like, oh, the gun's upstairs in the closet, the knives are in the kitchen. I could pick up this thing that's on the table and try to defend myself, because Mitch he's pissed off and he's drunk. And just as the chapter is about to end, chapter 21, as we're about to stop, it's Mitch who reaches out and grabs onto Polly's arm so hard that she said she could feel his fingertips digging into the skin. And she says, I felt trapped. And that was it. That was the end of the chapter right then and there, And his grips are like a vice. I'm trapped. That's exact words in the end of chapter 21. So now we look at that, and I told you about Tegan. She's got a lot of assumption, right? Because she had us assuming and made us think that it was Hank is the bad guy. And Hank's the one abusing Polly, and you know, he's mean to her and all this stuff, and is she in an abusive relationship? Now we know it's Mitch. It's the neighbor grabbed her arm. That's why she has the bruise on her arm from Tegan, because we're getting the backstory from before the crash. So Mitch is actually the bad guy in this situation. I'm starting to think, you know, Tegan's got it wrong. Hank seems like he's just the guy who goes up and works as a mechanic all day, doesn't say much, helped out Tegan in the snow, brought her back. You know, I guess there's been some arguing between him and Polly, but, you know, maybe he's uncomfortable with the scenario. He doesn't know what to do with Tegan. She's pregnant. But Hank doesn't seem like a bad guy. He barely said anything to Polly when she has this little girl in the house giving her a bath, and he knows it's something she's not supposed to be doing, but he lets her go. So we see how the assumption with Tegan's kind of, you know, we're starting to learn some different stuff about Hank here. You know, maybe Hank's not a bad guy. You know, Hank could be a good guy. And we're starting to learn a little bit more about Polly. You know, she's in this situation where the incident happened. Mother passed away 2 years ago. Oh, I just remembered. Mitch does say something very interesting. I almost forgot, so let me add it in before I go. Before Mitch grabs the arm of Polly, he says, a couple years ago, you were admitted to a mental institute. We all know that you're crazy. I don't want you anywhere around my daughter. I'm glad I remembered that part of the book, because we just learned that about Polly. Like, wait, you were admitted to an institution? Like, you had a breakdown? What was that from? 2 years ago, I mean, was when her mom got the cancer diagnosis. Does that have something to do with it? Does the incident have something to do with it? Like, where are we going here? You know what I mean? So we had a lot to learn about Polly. Yeah, Frida, you're doing a great job with these characters. You know, we're reeled in with Tegan, because I love the situation with Tegan. We want to see what happens to her. I hope she gets out of this, gets to the hospital, gives birth to a baby. Of course, that's what we all want as the readers. And now we got Polly and Hank. Maybe we got Hank wrong. He seems like a decent guy, but Polly's got a lot of issues going on, especially with the neighbor up the street. I mean, he's got her trapped right now. So I'm looking forward to reading on. I'm going to get into chapters 22 over the weekend. It's 22, 23, 24, 25. We'll go to the end of 26. We'll stop at the end of 26. So let's read 22 through 26, and then we will come back. We'll do another review video, talk about what's going on with Polly here, Mitch, what happens. Do we see Tegan come back? And yeah, I'm really excited for the characters, really excited for the story and everything that's going on. So, you know, please keep reading along with me. Make sure you get down in the comments section, leave me some messages, let me know what you think about the story, the characters, the changeover, and how everything's going. So until next time, yeah, put the tech down, pick the books up. I'm Matthew James.